and Morris Solicitors, myself and Fraser with you this evening, and we are going to go to our next guest. Fraser, I think this is a first. I don't think we've ever had someone who's just reffed a game join us live from the refs room on the show. Is that right, would you say?
Soaking wet, I imagine, in the weather that's been outside tonight. But no, great tournament starting tonight, of course. Memory of a great man, Joe Lennon. And Marty, if you'd start actually by giving us a score update, obviously.
Yeah, clapping game. Milford United beat Hugh Branston 2-0.
Excellent stuff. And we were saying off air, obviously this is a summer pre-season game, and you probably reffed it in conditions that felt a bit like autumn.
At least it was warm rain. It was a bit like going on holiday in a monsoon.
Good stuff. What's it like for you as a ref, though, in pre-season? Do you enjoy taking charge of some of these pre-season tournaments? And we've said that in Pembrokeshire, the tradition of some of these tournaments is a really good thing, I think, as part of the football scene. And for you, is it important as well just to warm up for the new season by getting involved with these games?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really proud to do the Joe Lennon as well. For the last couple of seasons, I've managed to do all 3 games. So it's part of my pre-season as much as anything else. So yeah, I'm delighted to be asked. But if I've got a free night, I'll do them.
How long have you ref for, Marty, in the Pembrokeshire leagues?
How long?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's maybe my 4th season. So just COVID, really. Post-COVID, I gave up. I was a bit old to play, even sort of Division 4, Division 5. So I figured I'd start sending the boys off instead.
Good stuff. And you're going to be potentially having to do a bit more of that this season, and that's one of the reasons we've got you on this evening. Because Fraser, you and I spoke, didn't we, last week at the end of the show with Gordon as well, about the change to the rules that are coming in grassroots leagues across Wales, Pembrokeshire being one. And this is the introduction, Fraser, of the sin bin, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we said was this was a tricky one for referees to administer, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Marty tell us a bit more now, I'm sure. But I'll explain my fears, and Marty might allay them or maybe embrace them, depending on how he's feeling about it. You've got a situation now where league games in Pembrokeshire, even if you have a proper, if you don't have linesmen, so you're not going to be, you don't have neutral linesmen. Sorry, you have club linesmen, of course. So in terms of keeping track of if you've had to sin bin a couple of players of the 10 minutes and so on. I know people are joking about having to wear 6-7 watches, but you're going to have to need an alternative time device to obviously the game one and keeping track of it when you haven't got official help on the sideline. I would find a bit of a concern. And my other concern, Marty, what I want to put to you as well is I may have understood this wrong. I believe they can't be administered in a game where there isn't a qualified referee. But we know in Pembrokeshire you'll have some Saturdays where you'll have a league where some games have official referees, some don't. Mm-hmm. Which for me means all of a sudden you've got a league where matches are out of sync with each other, and you've got teams who may be picking up suspensions where others can't because there's no sin bin rules. So straight away that's a concern for me. But you're the expert. You talk away.
Far from an expert, to be honest, Frank. But yeah, I think my concern is it's going to be difficult to administer on the pitch as well. We've got plenty going on in lots of good games and. Tackles flying in, penalties. If we were to sin bin somebody this year, it's game time as well. So we have to manage the fact that if there's substitutions involved in that 10-minute period, you have to extend it. To be fair, the FAW have put on a number of road shows, and all of last season, I only yellow carded 3 players for dissent. So as much as I'm a bit dramatic on my social media at times, I'm not sure how much of an impact it's actually going to have. 3 bookings and 2 of those were in the last game of the season for dissent. So my lived experience is pretty good across Pembrokeshire.
Go on, Fraser. Go on.
Just clarify this rule for me, Marty. So a player has picked up a yellow card, right?
Yeah, right, 2 seconds.
Then gives some dissent.
No, sorry guys, I'm live on Pure West Radio.
We're proving it live.
Just chucking me out the changing rooms.
The lights are being turned off and everything. Yeah, go on.
A player's had a yellow card and then a sin bin offence comes in. Does he get 10 minutes, or will that count as a second yellow card and a red?
Yeah, second yellow and red. So you only get 2 yellows regardless. Right. But if one of the offences is for dissent, then he takes, if it's the first one, he'll take a 10-minute sin bin as well.
Right. Okay.
And it is important that we say that it's to deal with dissent, Marty. And from I'd just like to pick up a bit on what you said there, actually, because there were some stats that were put out alongside this by the FAW that spoke about the abuse that match officials got, and we said on the show it's disgusting. There's no place for officials to be abused, and that's our starting position. No one goes into refereeing to just be abused on a Saturday. Your experience, have you had instances where you've been made to feel uncomfortable when you've been refereeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think every ref that's ever picked up a whistle will have had those experiences, and it's no I'm not a shy person. My communication skills I think are decent, so I'll talk to players and coaches throughout the game. And again, last season there was a few instances where I've actually posted some. I called it referee bingo. So if I was abused on a Saturday, I'd post it on my socials. And to be brutally honest, I think naming and shaming a couple of clubs and players, it totally changed my season, because from game 1 and game 2, I had hardly any abuse whatsoever then. And I think it's about communicating, isn't it? I do it for the love of the game. The last thing I want to do on a Saturday is be, hurled abuse at or be made to feel, terrible. Like, I'm helping you guys out, because I love the game and that's what I want to do.
Yeah. And in terms of using the new sin bin rules this season, how are you going into this season? What's your mindset going to be? Are you wanting to use it early to put a marker down, or actually would you rather not use this, Marty? What would be your preference? And I know it's hard to say that, but what would be your?
It's not that I wouldn't. Idea? If there's dissent, if there's verbal abuse, then I'll use it, of course. And I think clubs will soon understand that by losing a player for 10 minutes, it's going to have a detrimental effect on their game, on their season. So hopefully it'll cut out what little abuse I've had. And for other refs as well, they'll use it how they see fit. But like I mentioned earlier, I think there was 3 yellow cards for dissent all season for me. So as much as I'm a little bit anxious about the administering of it, hopefully it won't be a massive problem for me, to be honest.
Marty, I'm interested in how much consultation the FAW went with referees like yourself, if any at all, over this before bringing this measure in. And I mean, look, you're not responsible for the measure. You've got no point. You've got no choice but to administer it. It's a directive that's been brought in. But you've talked about obviously abuse in football. We know it can be a problem sometimes. We know there's yellow and red cards as well. Was this measure necessary?
100%. I think, I've seen referees, I've been watching on Saturdays, and the abuse is just ridiculous. And from grown men, from professionals, from supporters, from mums, from dads, it's just ridiculous. So it's absolutely necessary, and hopefully it will make a huge difference to referees' experiences on a Saturday, and probably encourage a few more to come into the game as well. Because as you all know, there's a massive shortage of referees, and you alluded to earlier that it's only generally divisions 1, 2, and potentially some of 3 that get refs on a Saturday. So we really need to encourage more people to pick up the whistle, and this is definitely a good way to do that.
I'll definitely talk about that in just a sec, because I really do want to talk about some of the positive sides to refereeing, and I know there are loads, and I follow your social media, Marty, and I think you're a brilliant advocate for being a referee and for your love of the game. I just wanted to pick up a bit on the administration of this rule, because that's the thing Fraser and I have said. Are you going to physically need to have another watch to keep an eye on it? Because when we see it in rugby, obviously you see the players sit on the side. You see it in hockey at the Olympics as well. When a player gets sin-binned, it's very easy to keep a check on the time. But for you, when you're taking charge of a game, you don't have a fourth official. How challenging do you think that is going to be, in all seriousness, to keep a check of what's going on there?
I genuinely don't know. Most refs have got 2 watches anyway, and there's a number of apps that they utilise. Personally, I don't use an app called Ref6, but I think probably a few more refs might actually start using that now, because that's got a few tools available, I think, to double check things like that. But hopefully it won't be an issue. I've got 2 watches on. I'll just have to keep track of it and hope that the game doesn't kick off while there's a player in the sin bin.
It's going to be interesting, that.
I'm actually interested in one more thing, question, not to try to throw...
Gents, I think my phone's about to die. The reception is gone, the lights are going out, and as is my phone. Genuinely sorry.
Okay, just see whether Fraser can ask the question. If you go, Marty, you go. That's not a problem.
Marty, so I know obviously you couldn't give yellow cards to coaching
I'm really
staff.
sorry, I can't hear you, but good luck for the rest of the show.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah,
Cheers,
Marty, thank you. It's absolutely great to hear from you on Pure West Sport this evening, straight after reffing that Joe Lennon semi-final as well. Unfortunately, I think his signal has gone, his battery has died. We did a great job. It's a wet night as well down there.
No,
what were you going to ask, Fraser? What was the
I was
question?
actually going to come on to, which I think would be quite interesting. If you've seen at all levels, coaches are booked and sent off as well for discipline on the sidelines, aren't they? So for dissent thrown in the sidelines. So what is the protocol now if you give a coach a yellow card? Does he have to go in the stands or the change room for 10 minutes and then come back? Just be interested to know if the same rule would apply.
And does that ever happen in Pembrokeshire football? Have there been instances where officials on the bench have been booked or sent off?
Yeah, managers certainly. Yeah,
and actually that could be a thing, couldn't it? Where that might happen. Yeah, that's a very good question. What I was going to finish by talking to Marty about Fraser, and we can pick up a bit on it as well. I do follow his social media, and I think obviously he's involved with us here at Pure West as well. Very passionate about reffing and about football, and he made a great point early on in our conversation there about the fact that if it wasn't for refs giving up their time to volunteer on a Saturday, because that's effectively what they're doing, isn't it? We wouldn't have football go on, and we've got to make it attractive for people to want to be officials in Pembrokeshire on a Saturday. Do you think clubs and players have got a big part to play in that?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I think there has been a problem with officiating across the board in Pembrokeshire. You're looking at umpire shortages, referee shortages. There's various reasons for that. I don't think it's just about abuse. For example, there's a lot more scope now to play at senior level. You've got over 45s football and cricket, over 50s, 60s, and those sort of things mean that people are still active players, whereas beforehand they probably would have gone into umpiring at those ages. But yeah, of course, clubs can play a part in helping referees. You don't want things to get out of hand, and we have all seen it in Pembrokeshire when they do sometimes. It is part of football as well. I think a good ref will always understand that within reason, emotion is involved in football, tempers do fray, and I think it's managing it as well. But we need people like Marty, Marty young, keen, obviously loves his refereeing. And I think you've also got along him, you're looking at people like Boxer from Carey, the Jenkins brothers, young upcoming refs. So whilst it's still a grave concern in cricket and the lack of umpires and the age of umpires, certainly in football, we do seem to have this new generation coming through now. So that's healthy.
Yeah, that is good, and that's what we need, isn't it, really? Because we need people to be coming through to carry on reffing, and hopefully people like Marty will be an advocate. And what's your view finally then, Fraser, with the season not far away now? Will you be, I think we'll all be watching with interest, actually, to see how this new rule is interpreted. You might see different officials going with it a slightly different way, and Marty said, and I think I took from him that he won't be quick necessarily to use it because he probably doesn't feel like he needs to, because he feels that he manages a game pretty well as a ref, and as a result only booked 3 people for dissent last season. Other officials might take it a different way and want to go early. What do you think?
Absolutely, every official takes a different approach. I think you could have some chaotic scenes in the first couple of weeks while clubs are getting used to this. It's going to be very hard to gauge, isn't it? Like you say, sometimes you have to play the referee and an in-style referee, and everyone's different, and it's hard to gauge what constitutes dissent that means a yellow card in 10 minutes. So it'll be interesting to see if it does stamp it out. I hope it is within reason. Like I said, emotions can boil over sometimes in football, and as long as it is direct abuse. I like Marty's in a much better position than me to answer this. My initial thought when this came in was it's not necessary. He obviously is a referee, feels it is, and you've got to respect that. He knows what he's doing in that respect a lot more than I. Yeah. But I have grave concerns about how this will be administered, and for the reasons we outlined earlier, especially in places like Pembrokeshire where you don't have neutral linesmen and so on. I feel for the referees. I think it's going to be very difficult for them.
He did say it was needed, because he said that refs do get really bad abuse. He hasn't personally, but he did say that it was needed for that reason. So yeah, we'll keep a really close eye on it. And actually, we've had the refs' perspective. It would be great to hear from a manager and some players as well. I'd like to know what managers are going to be telling their players, especially at, the top divisions where this will be in play, where there are qualified officials who will be taking charge. So this will have to be used. This rule will be in play. But what do you think the managers will be saying to their players, Fraser? Will they be saying anything, or will they be actually saying, "Come on, watch your dissent. Nothing silly, because if you do, you could cost us a game.
There'll be certain referees who they'll be warning their players about. That's for sure. I don't mean that in any kind of like derogatory way or inflammatory way, but obviously there are referees that are more prone to giving cards than others. You know, like we just touched on, all referees have a different style, and I think when they realise it, they'll soon realise how detrimental it is. I think we probably will see a spate of sin bins in the first couple of weeks while people get to grips with this. It would be ludicrous for them not to warn players about it, because otherwise you're going to be down a man for large parts of the game, aren't you?
And what about you? Have you ever been sin binned playing rugby?
Yes. Yeah. Not so much for dissent, I don't believe, but yeah, I've had sin bins, and I think rugby is such a different dynamic to football, and they tried it so poorly, didn't they, to bring the 10 yards rule into football in the same way they hoped that it would have the effect on discipline it did in rugby. And that was always ridiculous thinking, because in rugby, to go 10 metres back, it is a lot more productive. In football, it doesn't always help to put a ball forward 10 metres in the box. In fact, there was the famous one where defenders started doing it deliberately, didn't they, so that David Beckham's free kicks were closer to the box and harder to get up over the wall. So I think there will be discussions about it between managers and players. There have to be, but I'm glad I didn't have to deal with it myself, because we've all said, maybe shouted or things bubbled over from time to time. But I'm relieved that it didn't catch my ear, that's for sure.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll have a bit more on this before the season starts, and actually in those first few weeks of the season. As I say, we'd love to hear from anyone else involved in the game locally as well, to give us your perspective and how this will go on those first few weeks. Will it be as Fraser thinks it might be? It could be a slightly chaotic start as this rule gets bought in at the start of the season. We've got a bit more football to do. We'll get some news from Haverfordwest County, who warmed up for the start of the Welsh Premier League season with a really big win at Carmarthen, 5-0 at the weekend. They need to get used to scoring goals there, though, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Also a bit of local cricket to round up as well, and we will have one eye on what's going on in Paris with Keely Hodgkinson set to go for gold. She'll be challenging hard in the women's 800 metres final. That's set to go in the next 5 minutes as well. So plenty more still to come. Final part of Pure West Sport is on the way in a few moments' time.